Hello. Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on where you are in the world. 大家好, 안녕하세요, vanakkam, selamat petang, selamat sore, sawadee-krap, and etc. Welcome to the AsiaTEFL webinar series 2021. Just a gentle reminder for you to mute your microphones to minimize distraction from any audio feedback. Thank you. For your information, this is the second webinar of this AsiaTEFL webinar series, and we have got participants from more than 50 countries joining us today. And you are most welcome to turn on your camera so that all of us can see your faces, can see your smile, and so that we can feel the human touch from you, although we are getting here together virtually. So I can see many of you have turned on your camera, so let's probably wave at each other. Hi. Thank you. So I believe what brings us together here today is because our concern for education, because we care, we are passionate, and more importantly, we have aspirations for education in the new normal. So once again, welcome to the second AsiaTEFL webinar. So some of you may wonder what AsiaTEFL webinar series actually is. So we are going to play you a very short video clip to show you what the webinar series is all about. Sit back and enjoy.
So far, the visibility of AsiaTEFL has only been through its annual conferences and through its publications in the Journal of AsiaTEFL and through the AsiaTEFL book series. This webinar series will provide greater visibility all the year round to AsiaTEFL.
AsiaTEFL webinar series is a realization of aspiration to meeting together for academic development and promoting friendship despite this pandemic. Professor Kanakumaran Subramaniam has initiated this project, and he has put lots of efforts on this. His devotion should be appreciated. I hope that everyone participating in webinar series will get engaged and further stimulated in each webinar.
Yes, let's get engaged and stimulated. So today, our theme is embracing the new normal in English language education from a pedagogical perspective, innovative approaches and methodologies for classroom best practices. The pandemic has changed the whole ecosystem, the way we work, the way we live, and the way we learn. So today, we are going to learn so much from our panelists about emerging teaching and learning paradigms in ELT education. Before we begin, I'd like to invite Professor Ravinder Gargesh, one of the AsiaTEFL presidents, to deliver his welcome address. Over to you, Prof. Gargesh.
Namaskar, Assalamu alaikum, Khair likun, Dobry dzień, Swasti tonbai, Joan Nal, Salamat Petang, Shubha Apona, and many kind of greetings. Surely good morning, good afternoon, good evening. We are all over the globe today. What a wonderful feeling. What a wonderful feeling. Over 50 countries being represented, and over 1,700 participants have registered for the webinar. That shows the outreach of AsiaTEFL today and the popularity of AsiaTEFL. Thank you very much for joining, and thank you very much for coming here. And a very, very warm welcome to all of you for the session, for the second session of this webinar series. And I would also like to welcome all the speakers. And we have, especially we have Dr. Nguyen Thuy Nga, Dr. Swarsi Madhya, another Vice President with AsiaTEFL. A Vice President is also participating today. Dr. Tu Wei Kyang, Mr. Chai Shun Yu, Mr. MS Nikolai V. Tavares. All of you, a very warm welcome to you. A very warm welcome to our past presidents, Professor Hyo Wang Lee, Professor Fuad Abdul Hamid, Professor Jian Jiehyun, our vice presidents, and all the executive council members and the AB members also. All the participants and all the officials of AsiaTEFL, a very warm welcome to you. This is a wonderful occasion that we are going to celebrate academics today, again, on the webinar series. The webinar series has already been introduced to you, but I would still like to thank especially Dr. Prakasit Sitikul. Dr. Prakasit is also Vice President of AsiaTEFL, and he is the chief organizer of the webinar series. And we are all very happy that he has carried forward the passion of Professor Gana Kumaran Subramaniam. He has done it so wonderfully well. We are very proud of Professor Prakasit, very, very proud of him. He's doing a wonderful job, and all of you are participating. The first series was also very successful, and I hope that the second series will also be very successful. We look forward to the deliberations today. And again, once again, a very, very warm welcome to all of you. I look forward to listening to all of you. It'll be a wonderful occasion. So many people from all over the globe. Well, the sun is not going to set over the AsiaTEFL now. Wonderful. Thank you very much. A very, very warm welcome to you.
Thank you very much, Prof. Gagesh, for the warm welcome. At this webinar, we will start with our panelists sharing their insights, and you will have the opportunity to submit your questions to today's panelists by sending your questions to Mentimeter. You can scan the code to access Mentimeter, and we will also provide you with the link in the chat box. You may send in your questions at any time during the webinar. We will collect these questions and address them during the Q&A session. And if you have yet to register for the webinar series, please do so by either scanning the code displayed on the screen right now or using the link we provide in the chat box. So today we have 4 very prominent speakers today to share with us their expertise and insights. And now let me introduce you to our moderator, Dr. Prakasit Sitikul. Dr. Prakasit Sitikul is a full-time lecturer from the Language Institute, Thammasat University, Thailand. He earned a doctorate in Language and Literacy Studies with a concentration in second language reading processes at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, USA. He is currently Vice President for Conferences and Professional Network of AsiaTEFL. He is also an Associate Editor of the 3L journal, Language, Linguistics, Literature, which is indexed in Scopus first quartile. He was the past president of Thailand TESOL organization. He has extensive experience in teaching training throughout Thailand. His areas of interest include second language literacy, cognitive and social cultural factors in second language learning, and intercultural issues in second language learning. Without further ado, I would like to pass the floor to our moderator. Over to you, Dr. Prakasit.
Thank you very much, Shin Yu, for the nice introduction about me. Hello, everybody. Greetings from Bangkok, Thailand. As introduced by Shin Yu, I'm Prakasit Sitikul. I will be serving you as your moderator today. The topic for the webinar series is Embracing the New Normal in English Language Education from a Pedagogical Perspective, Innovative Approaches and Methodologies for Classroom-Based Practices. You'll be hearing different perspectives on this very timely topic from our 4 distinguished speakers from different countries namely Vietnam, Malaysia, Indonesia, and Hong Kong. But before we get started, I wanted to inform you about the format of the webinar. The webinar is in the form of panel discussion consisting of 2 rounds. Each speaker will have about 15 minutes for the first round, followed by the Q&A session. After Q&A, each panelist will have 2 or 3 minutes to sum up the main points. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, let's get started. Now, moving along to our session, please welcome our first distinguished speaker, Professor Nguyen Thuy Nga from Vietnam. Professor Nguyen Thuy Nga is currently Senior Lecturer, Teacher Educator, and Dean of Faculty of Foreign Languages, Ho Chi Minh City, Open University in Vietnam. Her research areas lie largely in the areas of language education, teacher education, effective learning and teaching, learner and teacher beliefs and expectations, change and innovation in English language teaching. Professor Nguyen Thuy Nga will be speaking to us on how do teachers change and modify their teaching practices in Vietnam during the new normal situation. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Professor Nguyen Thuy Nga. Professor, are you here with us?
Okay, sorry.
Okay.
Thank you for your nice introduction, Farragut City. My pleasure to be here to share with you some of my own experience, my expertise. And first of all, I would like to thank the AsiaTEFL organization for giving me this opportunity to share some of my views from Vietnam. And this is me. My name is Nga, and my full name is Nguyễn Thuy Nga. I'm from Ho Chi Minh City, Open University. I hope that some of you know something about my organization, my institution. This is the place where I'm working. Ho Chi Minh City Open University, Vietnam. This is a public university that teaches degree courses through full term, and we have around 15,000 students, and distance education, we have around 50,000 students. And we have more than 40 majors. For languages, we have English, Chinese, Japanese, Korean, and we also have Thai as our second language and Indonesia as our second language. And this is us from Open TESOL. I hope that some of you know about something about Open TESOL, where we also have international conference sharing our teaching methods, our teaching experience with other scholars in the regions. And this is our situation. I think that all of us now in Asia, we're suffering the pandemic crisis in Ho Chi Minh City, where I'm living. So we have around 25,000 people affected by COVID-19. And yesterday we have around 2,400 cases positive. With that, so we were teaching online, and we are teaching online at the moment. One point I need to admit that we were not officially trained to teach online, and we need to respond to the new situation. So my topic is how we respond to the new situation in order to work effectively in the new normal. So this is our teaching practices in the new normal. How do we respond to the new situation as a language teacher and as a teacher educator? For today, in my sharing, I'm going to share 3 points that I'm interested in. That means I'm going to talk about a little bit about innovative pedagogies. Innovative pedagogies in our teaching context in Vietnam and our teaching practices. I'm going to talk about face-to-face teaching practices and online teaching practices. Not face-to-face is not the past. Face-to-face will be the future. And online will not the present, that will be the future as well. So a little bit about pedagogy. So what does that mean? So can you think of something about pedagogy in your mind? Sharing with me, what does that mean, pedagogy? So this is a combination of teaching. We have A and P. So you know what does that mean, A, and you know what does that mean, P. So please share with me. So A, that means teaching approaches, and P, that means teaching principles. So when we think about pedagogy, we have a combination of teaching approaches and teaching principles. And innovative pedagogies. So from different experts and scholars, innovative pedagogy means playful, experiential, computational, embodied, multiliteracy, problem-based and cooperative learning, lifelong and student-driven learning. So here with us, playful. The student enjoy when they study experiential. That means they need to do something, right? They need to be involved. And work computational, that means computers can help us to solve our problems. And multiliteracy, that we study English, is the topic that's very popular nowadays. And of course, we, as language teacher, we are familiar with problem-based and cooperative learning. When the students solve problem and they work together. For lifelong and student-driven learning. So all of us expect that our students will have a lifelong and they try their learning, where they show their activeness in their learning. And my choice from different aspects, different theories about pedagogy, about innovative pedagogies, I choose for my teaching practices, I choose active learning, and I choose variety of student active teaching activities, that we use different teaching activities to help our students, to work with our students. And one point that I'm very interested in, that the student, they themselves, they need to discover the knowledge, they discover how the knowledge works in their own context. And of course, we have cooperative learning, where cooperation is one of the 21st century skills. That's my choice when I plan my own lesson and when I educate our teachers. Because here, with all these things, people believe that can lead to greater student learning. And of course, all of us as teachers, we hope that our students, they can learn, right? And this is the active learning strategies. We have different active learning strategies We have writing, we have self-assessment, we have group evaluation, we have case study, we have brainstorming, we have a lot of strategies for active learning. So you can choose for yourself some strategies. And can you guess what I'm going to choose for my own teaching? And I choose 2 for my own teaching and 2 in order to design the lesson and share with you today. So the experiential learning and inquiry learning. When the student really do something, involve themselves in the situation through inquiring. And I also based on PIES principle when we focus on positive interdependence, accountability, individual accountability, individual about accountability, equal participation. That means all the students, they need to participate in the learning process, and not only from teachers, not only from other friends, but all of the students, they need to participate in the teaching context and the classroom situation. They have to show their activeness there. And of course, in order to have that, we need interaction among the students, between teachers and students, interaction between individual to individual, interactions between groups to group, different groups, right? And I also based on Bloom taxonomy. As language teachers, all of us are familiar with Bloom taxonomy, that we have remembering, understanding, applying, analyze, and evaluate and create. But how do I use that for my teaching practice? So one of the part, I use Bloom taxonomy in order for the student to design their questions. And I'm going to have more detail about the questions they're going to ask in our class. For example, the students are trained to ask questions for remembering. So what questions should be asked in order to help people to remember? What questions should be asked in order for them to understand, to apply, to analyze, to evaluate, and finally create? So based on the theory, based on the principle of learning and teaching, and based on my own teaching beliefs, I choose for myself one of the teaching activity, one of the model I would like to share with you today, that the 3 A's. So can you guess the first A, and the second, and the third one? So the first A is very simple, right? Oh, still here. So we have ask, analyze, and answer. A very simple teaching practice module. But we can have that for different teaching classes environments. Right? So how would we design the teaching activity, the model in our lesson, and how the model work? So ask questions for A1. The student asks questions. So in my class, the student asks an individual to individual. They have to prepare questions to ask each other. That means if we have a group of 3, one student will ask question, right? So ask. And the second, analyze, right? Analyze. Other students will analyze the question. And then the student answer the question, right? And they can do with 3 students, a group of 3. Or we can have a group that can ask question, a group that can answer the question, the group that can analyze the question. That means we can have individual work, we can have group work here with the circle, right? And then the questions, more questions to ask, more questions to be analyzed, and more questions to be answered. And how could we, the student ask questions that based on the student level, the student learning outcomes, the lesson objectives, and questions based on Bloom taxonomy. The student were presented with Bloom taxonomy, and they can ask questions in for remembering, the questions for understanding, the questions for analyzing, the questions for evaluating, and the questions for creating. So they were trained with Bloom taxonomy in order to ask the questions. And then A number 2, we have analyzed questions and answers. Why we have analyzed questions and answer at the same time? No, first, the student analyze questions only, right? When the first group asks questions, the second group will analyze the questions, whether the questions are appropriate. If we plan to ask questions for remembering, so whether the questions belong to remembering. If we plan to ask questions for understanding, the second group will make decision whether the questions are appropriate for understanding, for creating, for example, and they can analyze the questions based on what, why, how, and so what. And if they believe that, if they make decision that the questions are appropriate, so they pass the questions to the answering group. So we have the circle, right? And now, the third group, they receive questions and they answer the questions. They answer the questions. And what happened next? The question, the answer now go back to the analyzing group. So whether they will make decision that the answer are appropriate, right, are correct, according to their understanding, and they can pass appropriate answer to the questioning group, They make their decision, not the questioning group, and then the questioning groups can have the answer from the answering group. And all the 3 groups are all 3 students. Do they learn? How they learn? When they ask question, do they learn? When they analyze the question, do they learn? When they answer the questions, do they learn? When they analyze the questions, analyze the answers. And from my own observation and from the student feedback, we observe the student activeness in asking questions. And we observe the student collaborate when they design, they make questions. And work, ask, analyze, and answer, the learning process certainly rooted from the student aspect, not from us, right? Not from our teachers' aspect. They are rooted from the student aspect, and work their question, work their answer, and work their analysis. The student really contribute to the lesson. And this is my face-to-face class. I think that not long time ago, around 2 or 3 months, 2 months ago, when the student, they ask questions, we have one student ask question, one student answer the question, one student analyze the questions and analyze the answer. They work in group of 3, and all of them, they were very engaged in these activities. From my always observation and from the student feedback, yes, the student learn, all 3 students, all 3 groups, they learn and they show their activeness in their learning. This is face-to-face class, offline face-to-face class. And this is us. We can see ourselves here, right? So this is my class, face-to-face. No. This is online class, when the students are also asked to work in groups, to work in pair, work my model 3A's, right? Ask, analyze, and answer. And here we have combination. I use Padlet for these activities, for my online class and for my face-to-face class. So this is a combination of online and face-to-face. When the student, they post their discussion on Padlet, and they can do presentation later. So what is the student really engage, and they contribute to the lesson. So my concluding, innovative pedagogies. This is our choices, our contribution based on our teaching context, our beliefs, and our experiences, right? So among different theories, we can choose some for our teaching context. And teacher practice changes and reflection. So when I tried 3A models in my class, so I need to interview the student, I need to do my own reflection. As we know that we do not learn from our experience, we learn from our reflections on our experience, right? And then with that, the student contribute to the sharing and learning process in my class. Thank you for your listening. So if you have any questions, please ask. And if you want to discuss more, please email me. This is my email address. Thank you again for your participation.
Thank you very much, Professor Nguyen Thuy, for addressing this interesting topic. You revisit some current theories regarding innovative approaches and teaching methodologies. I really like the model of 3A's applications in online and offline classes, and how these 3A's link with current theories and work in different teaching contexts. This is very practical. Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, just to remind you, if you have any questions, please jot them down. We will have the Q&A period after the first round. Now let's move on to our second speaker. He's from Malaysia. He is Associate Professor of TESOL at School of Education, University of Nottingham, Malaysia. He is currently the interim head of School of Education and Director of Postgraduate Certificate in Higher Education. He is a recipient of Lord Deering Award for Teaching and Learning. His talk will focus on what does being innovative mean in the new normal situation. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Professor Tu Wei Kyung.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. And first of all, I'd like to thank my colleague from Malaysia who has been prompting me that I've got the time wrong because, because when I saw the times, I thought that our time zone was similar to the Korean one. So that's why I was still very casually walking around. Thanks, Datin Mazwin, for calling me. Thank you so much. My name is Wei Kyung, and thanks, Dr. Prakasit, for introducing me. So I think the first speaker, she has gave us a model. What I try to look at in today's sessions with you is a very short one in terms of what does it mean to be innovative during the new normal. Yeah. Before that, let's look at one or two pictures. Okay, this is one of the pictures that we've got in Malaysia. Okay, two young children. In order for them to access internet connection, they needed to take a boat with their father, okay, to the middle of a river in order for them to attend classes. Because their village has no internet connection. And in the middle of the river, that's where he and his brother could access the internet. I think this is something that it happens in many countries in the world, if we look at it, not exclusively in Malaysia. And what do we, the teachers, do? Yeah, if you look at it, all of us, we use our creativity. This is one photo which I really like. A teacher from Mumbai, India. She's a mathematics teacher. She was using the glass from the refrigerator and then to show the movements, all the calculations and movement or actions that it needs to be done by the students. And at the same time, I know that my friends who are teaching English, when they want to show them in terms of correcting students' answers, they also use the same thing, not exclusively for science or mathematics teachers. So this is what is happening right now. And when I look at the title for today, Innovative Approaches and Methodology, I personally is a little bit careful and in terms of worried when we look at the notions of innovative, as well as what do we mean by new normal. Now let's look at the term here, okay, if you don't mind. Okay. Innovation, according to, well, OECD, okay, Organizations of Economic Cooperation Development, innovation is a new or improved product or process that differs significantly from the unit previously products or processes, and that has been made available to potential user or brought into use by the unit. I like to use this definition because this is a definition from the business world. When we bring it in, well, we are talking about product. Okay, like in our classroom, what is our product? Our product is our students' learning outcome, the processes, the delivery process. how are we adopt something new or created something new which are different from the previous one? Simple, right? So therefore, when we want to define innovation, we need to be contextualized. I had this very strong feeling in terms of when it comes to the notions of creativity and innovation is because of my experience working with teachers. 5 years ago, I've got 2 students in my class. Among the 2, one who needed to travel almost 7 hours to come to classes. Another one, okay, comes from urban setting. And when they had discussions in classroom, when we talk about creativity, innovation, and new approaches to attract students' attention, when one of the students who traveled 7 hours whenever he attended my class, these students from the urban school will say, that's not innovative. We have done this 10 years ago. But I remember these students who travel far told the whole class, my students, some of them couldn't even afford a pair of shoes. And in my classroom, I have one blackboard. Can you imagine blackboard? I have a whiteboard, I have marker pen, but our ink has finished 3 months ago, and we were still waiting for the state education departments to supply to us. So I have no choice to go back to chalk. So from then on, it struck on me that how important it is, we need to look at the context that when we talk about innovation as well as creativity, if we use the business model definition, it is just something that if your classroom, they have never experienced it before, and the students responded to it very well, that is innovation. So therefore, we try not to be one size fit all. Another concept that I would like to draw our attention to is, what is new normal? Could we imagine, going back to classroom right now, how would you imagine your class? Do you still need to wear your mask? Do you still need to keep to the physical distancing? Do we still allow for group work? What about online teaching? What about home-based teaching? What about teachers as well as the parents' relationship? What about the school and your relationship, as well as the school and the district or the state office relationship? How would it change? This is something that we need to keep in mind when we talk about new normal. What are we referring to? I think in certain countries, like certain countries that we know in Southeast Asia or in Asian country, I think at the moment, 2 countries has been quite fast in moving forward. One is in China as well as another in Singapore. For them, they make it very clear that even though it is a regular classroom, okay, they have gone back to school, but home-based learning is still a very important part of the curriculum. The rationale behind it is, well, we don't know when the next virus will hit us. We need to quickly to get teachers, we need to quickly to get students to be involved in online teaching and online learning. Is that the new normal that we are looking at? I think, again, we need to go back to the context. What we can envision that we have right now, especially I very empathize with my friends who are teaching in school, primary school, preschool, as well as secondary school, at the moment they found it very challenging. So when we talk about innovations and new normal, I would like to contextualize it. What are we referring to? Okay. Now, specifically, I would like to talk about, okay, if we talk about curriculum, an ideal classroom, we will talk about, okay, we have knowledge acquisition activities. We have inquiry-based activities, which we could do for language activities. We can have collaborative activities where students discuss with each other, discussions, practice-based productions, and then later assessment. How do we practice that in your innovation, in your innovative classroom? So let's look at it from the point of view of, point of view of a learning community.
全馬線係呢度落去嘅，呢度就係樓梯，嗰度升降機喺後邊。
Someone is talking right now. All right, so let's talk about it. Okay, now even though this is a development of learning community online, but I still find it very useful because it can be applied across, whether it is face-to-face or online. Okay, first, when will it happen? Next, who? 3, where is it? Because remember, a learning community, it is teachers with students in a classroom. We are talking about just the classroom for the moment, yeah? How? What are you going to use? What strategies, what delivery points are you using? Are you using blended teaching? Another how here, okay? Encourage both task-oriented discussion and social interactions. How do you make sure that, okay, you get them to focus on the task, means want them to complete, but at the same time, you want them to interact with each other. And lastly, how do you assign tasks, okay, to require them to work? Because we know that 21st century learning is about collaboration. So where, who, where, and the 3 how. So when we talk about innovations in the classroom, I would like to contextualize it. I can't use it one size fits all. However, in this sessions, I will share with you, okay, the principle that we use in School of Education, University of Nottingham, when we convey the message to our students, to my colleague, as well as university. And once in a while, well, sometimes the students, well, they misbehave. We still need, when the parents call us up, we will share this information with them. So when we talk about innovation and what do you call that, new normal, when are we talking about? Are we talking about right now? I think at every stage of the lockdown, like in Malaysia, every stage of the lockdown, we found that students have changed differently. Like when it first started last year, in March last year, when we first transferred to online learning totally, for the first 3 months, my students and we struggled. It took us 3 months. But in the second semester, when I worked with the same group of students, they told me how to maneuver. Because why? They know and understand we as the teacher, as well as our principal, learning outcome and all this, and they understand how to go about. I think when we come to teaching, sometimes routine will help, especially for young learners. But the question for young learner is the short spans of attention to get them to focus. So these are the things that we need to grapple with. What type of new approaches that you have used in your classroom, which has not been used by other teacher or by you before, and students found it useful? So for me, that is innovation. Even today, we have still I know that some of my friends who teach in the interior area, they don't have internet connection. So what they do, the teachers send the assignment pack, weekly assignment pack, to the head of the village and ask the students every Monday, go and pick it up from there. And what he did was he had a little pen drive because the head of village has a laptop. So he plugged it in, he has recorded and asked the head of the village to play so that the kids from the village can watch and then at least complete the assignment. So this is innovation. But for for urban schools, that might not be. Another point I would like to talk about, okay, is about effective support. I think all of us, when we talk about innovation as well as new normal, we need to psychological support. How do we support each other? We need to have safety net. We need to, right from the very beginning, talk about this at this juncture. First, I always share this with my students as well as my students who are teaching as well. I said, you share it with your students as well. Tell them, be nice to yourself as online learning requires new set of learning skills. Like I told them, if your kids, they don't have internet at home and you can only meet them once a week, tell them that, okay, your teacher will still be here, but it's going to be different. I will get back to you later so that they feel that, okay, nice. Next, finish assigned tasks and get prepared for every class. Tell them, I'm still there for you. Choose a comfortable place to attend your online class, okay? Next, be patient with possible internet connections. And sometimes the kid, the head of village at one day forgot to charge the laptop. So it took some time to charge because the village rely on generator. So they need to get the generator warming up and all this took time. So be supportive to your teacher as well as your classmate. Speak up. If you have any question, write it down in the notes and then pass it to the teacher when you meet the teacher next week and contact your teacher as well. So this is something that we talk about because for you to innovate, for you to try something new, you need to to get people to support you. Innovation, you need some kind of stability, and it also allow you to make some mistake. Now, another one is this. Okay, before I end my session. My session is very much talking about defining the notions of innovation and new norm. And the points that I want to make is, in research in 2009 as well as a research being published in this year, it shows that in order for teachers to be innovative, okay, colleagues support as well as student support are the two most important support that you have. It will help you to build the student and the teacher's confidence, and it will lead up to an innovation. But you may ask me, but I'm so afraid of my head of school, the principal and all this, so I don't dare to do it. But if you can negotiate with the principal, no one can stop you because your principal will know that you're doing something good for your students as well as the school. So with that, thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Tu Wei Kyung, for your wonderful presentation. It's very detailed, and we have learned a lot about changes on meaning of classroom practice during the new normal. The important points you make include what is lesson delivery, what is student engagement, and what is assessment. I'm sure that this is really beneficial information. Thank you so much. Now, we will move on to our third speaker, Our third speaker is from Indonesia. She earned her PhD from Macquarie University in Sydney, Australia. She is a professor in TEFL at Yogyakarta State University in Indonesia. With a range of experiences in international cooperation, she now views language teaching from multi-perspectives by relating it to important matters such as character education, identity formation, and world peace establishment. Her talk will focus on how can we engage students to enhance their learning. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Professor Suwasi Madya from Indonesia. Professor Madya, are you here with us?
Hello, can you see my screen? Not yet.
Not yet.
Okay, I would like to share my screen. Just a moment. All right. What about now?
Yes.
All right.
Yes,
Thank
yes.
you. Sorry for this technical problem. Usually have some problem with that. Well, thank you very much for introducing me in a nice way. I would like to greet all of you. Good afternoon, or good morning first for where you are. Good afternoon, good evening. I'm very glad to be here to share my experience with you. And my talk is also related to the first speaker and the second speaker's topic. So I'm glad that Professor Nguyen Thi has shown you different learning strategies which are active learning. And Professor Wei Kyung has reminded us that innovation should be contextualized. So I think I'm very glad that you have talked about this one. So just a moment. Oh my God, what should I say? This is my university. Hopefully you sometime you someday will come to Yogyakarta, Indonesia, and visit my university. Okay, this is the gate. Now, well, when the two first speakers were talking about the innovation in probably in teaching the language, now I'm here to share my experience in engaging postgraduate students in the learning through a sort of whether it's innovative or creative, I leave it with you to judge. Okay, but this is my effort to improve the course I have run for several years through the so-called cycle plan, do, check, and action. So I faced a big challenge last year when I ran a master course on language teaching methodology to implement the curriculum, which has to meet the requirements of the Indonesian National Qualification Framework, which stipulates that the level of learning should be at level 8. That's the challenge to me at that time. Now then I had to design the course to ensure students' engagement and exercise of higher order thinking skills and the 4C skills, like communication, collaboration, critical thinking, creativity. So the purpose of my presentation is to share my efforts to engage students to achieve the set learning outcomes. Now this is the context of my teaching here. In Indonesia, we have the so-called, our belief of being held accountable for all conducts in the world and this implication for character education. Okay, that's the first one here. Then we also have to think about the needs for learning the 21st century skills, which I have mentioned, the 4C skills, it's in the curriculum. And we also have mandated categories This one, character education, in the hearts and forces skills, I have that. And the needs for strengthening core identity, that one here. And also all the national will go to the campus because we have the curriculum, national curriculum. We have to go in our university, we have to commitment to excel beyond the national standard. And we have subject-specific competencies, mandated values and skills, and student engagement is the key to effective learning. This is my belief. This is the context. So the achievement of learning outcomes, as Professor Wei Kyung has mentioned, as the product of innovation, is through student engagement in learning here. Now, this one, the achievement outcomes will be this one, subject-specific, mandated content categories consisting of attitude, values, knowledge, and skills. It's very challenging, in fact. Then, of course, we have to see that what is meant by engagement is, the point is frequency of participation, patterns of involvement, and this consists of amount of time, allocation of resources, and the course should be designed to fully engage students. That is that here. This is the framework here. Now, the HOTS here mandated, as I have mentioned, but HOTS include in my understanding, critical thinking, problem solving, and decision making. Then the demand is even higher in the postgraduate level, which is level 8. What does it mean here? Is able to develop knowledge, technology, and or arts in specific field of professional practice through research and to produce an innovative and validated work. Then able to solve a scientific, technological, and or arts problem in specific field through inter or multidisciplinary approach. The last one is to able to manage the RD study, which benefits society, and the knowledge development recognized by nationally or internationally. So this is, what we have in our curriculum should be in this level. Now then, this is the course, this with 3 credit units. This course should be designed and implemented to facilitate student learning to achieve the following outcomes. This is that here. So academic integrity, high learning motivation, higher creativity, commitment to improvement, and high learning autonomy, and willingness to cooperate. That is the values here, the character values. Then the ability to propose creative and innovative solution to ELFT problems, to promote their proposal and open to constructive feedback. Then the skills of writing an academic paper, presenting it, chairing a class seminar, and promoting new networks on EFLLT. So how should this course be designed to ensure the level 8 course outcome in 16 weeks? That's my challenge here. So the same as previous year, a class seminar was chosen. So this is the challenge here. The previous year is the students were not fully engaged. It's online, it's previous semester or previous year. So the beginning of the new normal. So the challenge is because they are spread everywhere. So here, each student is to write an academic paper to propose a solution to EFLLT problem and present it in a class seminar, the online. Each student is to chair a presentation session, and participating students attend the presentation, and participating students respond to the presentation. So this is the design there. Now, that's the ideal one. The ideal condition is that students should engage themselves, not be engaged, but engage themselves willingly, observe the set values, meet the academic paper criteria, and exercise their thoughts. However, the reality, there's a little engagement, failure to meet the academic paper criteria, and minimal efforts to exercise thoughts. So you have the gap here. There's a problem I identify. This is the problem here, and how to solve it, redesign the course. So I have assumptions here. The first assumption is when students are engaged both inside and outside the classroom, their learning will improve. Students will be engaged if they know their learning needs. They will be engaged if they know what values they are to observe, the knowledge and skills they are to acquire, and the indicators of achievement. Then students will be engaged if they have choices. Students will be engaged, functionally and meaningfully engaged, if they are involved in reviewing, assessing their own works and their classmates. I think the previous speakers have mentioned the self-assessment and group assessment, peer assessment. So for assumption 1, sorry, what's that? The course was redesigned to ensure students' full engagement. Assumption 2, the students were involved in doing a pre-course assessment. Assumption 3, the complete syllabus and assignment description were communicated to students in advance. Assumption 4, the students were given the freedom to choose the topic for their paper and organize the seminar, including the assignment of moderators. Assumption 5, the students were involved in self and peer review and self and peer assessment. So these are the action there. Then I think I have mentioned that. I would like to see that here. So the engagement is fully aimed to support the course outcomes here, which have the free here. There's a moral performance values. Then you have this, the proposing solution and skills to write here. Now, how will we see that one? The necessities for the achievement of the course outcomes, and we discussed that at the beginning of the course. Then the lack after the pre-assessment course, the pre-course assessment, sorry, I found out that the lack of understanding of criteria for academic papers, and they don't know how to have the book review, and also the article summaries, and they lack knowledge of LT theories. Then they want individual interest in topic and collective organization of the seminar. So here, there is a learning contract here, here arrangement of the seminar, and the result of pre-course assessment will find out this one here. So I just analyze the data here. So I tried to fully support the students' learning by devising all of these documents: learning contract form, the pre-course self-assessment instrument, guide to writing an academic paper, guide to writing a book review, guide to writing journal article summary, guide to organizing a class seminar, checklist to review a paper manuscript, checklist to review your their language, presentation, peer assessment instrument, class performance peer instrument, assessment instrument, rules of the game in the class seminar, ebook on ELT and on character education published in the last 8 years. So these are, devised for the students, and the ebooks are delivered to the students. Referring to Gardner's 5 minds, students are provided with references on key issues in English language education, different models of language teaching, such as project-based learning, genre-based language teaching, cooperative and collaborative language teaching, corpus-based language teaching, instilling values through language teaching, hearts in language teaching and learning, language learner characteristics, and IP state. So these are the topics we refreshed, because they have been, most of them have been away from their campuses. So refreshing lectures and discussion in the first 7 weeks. Then the whole arrangement of the course, the first 6 semesters, one I have mentioned that. Meeting 7 and up to 7 and 11, students presented their papers in turns, one meeting for 2 or 3 students. In meeting 12, an overview feedback was provided, and students might ask for the necessary clarification. And meetings 13 up to 15, students presented their papers again, then 16 wrap up. Now this is the seminar here. On day 1, the paper was distributed to the on T-1, the paper was distributed to the class members who should review the, using checklist. On D-Day, a student moderator arranges the time allocation and makes efforts to involve participants. And 3, while a student presenter was presenting his or her paper, the student participants are to respond to the presentation, assess their presentation, assess the colleagues' contribution in terms of content and tone. And after getting responses or input from other students, the student presenter received critical comments from the lecturers. And last year, a guest lecturer from Manila joined the class and gave her critical comments too. So this is the interaction, the student engagement here. So taking place both inside and outside the classroom, and they have interaction with others through this, and also individual reflection after being given the review. So the result here is final version of the paper being submitted, review, journal summaries, classroom participation, reflective exam. You know, they are given time to review and revise until they reach the highest level of achievement. So this is the result. And to find out how, to my observation, in fact, I observed carefully. This is that one here. So some students during the course contact me personally for asking for clarification. But some students still are reluctant, but at least improving from the previous year. Then the guest lecturer, also a regional AsiaTEFL representative from the Philippines, commented positively on the students' oral English, but reminded gently that they have to adjust the theories into the teaching of VFL in the Indonesian context, since the theories such as cognitive learning and project-based learning are not typical theories of language teaching. I think this is a good reminder here. In my observation, students are engaged in the process in a class seminar, although only around 2 or 3 or 5 students were asking questions because of the time, and or commented after the presentation, depending on the topic. I also observed that self-assessment, peer assessment activities kept them engaged and made them pay more attention to the quality of their own works and their peers. However, to support my observation, I also conducted a survey, and this is the result. So you have, they admitted here the self-assessment. If you look at the means here, 1 up to 4 is the benefits positive here. Peer assessment is a bit lower, but still more than 3.5. But there is some concern here. This is very high. The peer assessment puts a strain on the relationship within the classroom. Still, this more than 3. It's a concern. Then they don't always feel confident in assessing their peers, and peer assessment tend to rate their peers the same way. There's the same way here, and sometimes they feel reluctant to judge peers' performance. So this is the concern here for me. So I also asked them to make a testimony. I don't want to read one by one, but they admitted that personally they are full and engaged. So probably they admit they're a bit stressed, but I don't know whether in higher education should be joyful learning or their time on task. But to me, because it's an adult, then they have to be time on task most of the time. Now then, just a moment. I would like to have this concern. So the needs for further improvement of my course, this is because they are concerned here. So I plan to have more clarification of the functions of peer assessment, and also more encouragement assessment training, then more learning to be able to assess their others' work as objectively as possible, and more encouragement to exercise student judgment, and plan to discuss thoroughly the assignment in the first meeting and upload the model works in the Google Classroom. So this is their feedback. So this is in the process of developing the course all the time, because of the new pandemic. And the students are spread all over Indonesia, in fact, from different countries. But I'm glad to share with you that their connections, is still moderate. Some students sometimes lost connection, but back again. That's the challenge. But we try to engage students in different ways of this course. Thank you very much. I hope what I share can be of some use to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Madhya, for your research-based presentation. The finding from the survey you conducted with the students engaged in the process of attaining the seminar course objectives through self-assessment review and peer assessment review show that the course arrangement like this benefits the students in many ways. Thank you very much for sharing this. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the last but not least speaker. Once again, don't forget to write down your question that you have. After the first round of the talk, the speakers will answer your questions. Ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce our last speaker, Nicole Tavares. Nicole Tavares is senior lecturer at the Faculty of Education of the University of Hong Kong. She specializes in English language education and content and language integrated learning, known as CLIL. She is currently master's degree TESOL program director. Nicole has numerous publications. Her leading article titled From Moodle to Facebook, Exploring Students' Motivation and Experiences in Online Communities, published in Computers and Education in 2013, has achieved over 380 citations to date. Nicole has received multiple teaching awards, including the Hong Kong University Teaching Innovation Award in 2020, her faculty's Emergency Remote Teaching Award in 2020, and Outstanding Teaching Awards, as well as Teacher Effectiveness Awards, presented by both Hong Kong University and her faculty since 2006. This is very impressive. Nicole, you received 2 major awards recognizing your online teaching and teaching achievements from your institution over the past 2 years. Would you describe your experience as being a relatively smooth one compared to many of us here? What prompted your innovations? I believe many of us are also very interested in finding out about some of your innovations and how you conceptualize innovation. And if you have any tips for us, please.
So thank you very much, Dr. Prakasit, for your most kind introduction and also for your questions. Right, so to say the least, I think I describe all that I have experienced with the abrupt shift to online teaching, and in fact all online since November 2019, to be by no means trivial. And if I were to name one positive thing about COVID, though, it has been a huge catalyst to my pedagogical growth, and to the extent, in fact, that I would never have imagined. One of our participants in the chat mentioned that desperation causes innovation. I can't agree more with this. So what exactly was it that caused my innovation? What inspired me to come up with the innovations that I implemented? Let me start with how innovation is conceptualized in language teaching. Delano, Riley, and Crooks back in 1994 described innovation as an informed change. While this reference might seem a little dated to you, I think it's very beautifully written and very true to me as well. They listed direct experience as being one of the greatest triggers of innovation. So what exactly was my first critical incident? I've brought along with me a clip to share with you how it all began on my side. It's a very short clip, but it speaks for itself. So let me play this to you now.
Okay, so we're having quite a big group. I think we will get ourselves started.
All right, so not too different from many of you here, I would assume. This was my very first Zoom lesson with my students, And for the next 2+ hours, I was speaking to 30 black boxes. So with this came my endless questions. Yet, to my great surprise, that evening, I received an email from a student in that class, and that was what Gary told me. So this got me thinking, what exactly was it that I did? And what was the experience that I gave Gary and his classmates that made them feel that it was warm, happy, and wonderful? And it's really with this that I began my inquiry with 2 prime goals in mind. As Dr. Prakasit mentioned just now, I'm a teacher educator. So my prime goal was to ensure that learning was by no means compromised amid the pandemic, and more importantly, as a teacher educator, that my students, many of whom are in-service English teachers, are supported in learning to teach online. So before I actually move on with what I've experimented with, and my sharing is from a very personal sense, as you can see, what I'm trying to do here on this slide is to put together the gist of my talk using the acronym INNOVATE. And on this note, let's take a look at another definition of innovation. While I really like the words thoughtfully experiment, which is when innovations come, I would seriously question whether something new or different is necessarily effective. So to add to this long asked question from Rich, I would assert that how effective or meaningful the innovation is largely hinges on learning outcomes, as Professor Wai Keung mentioned just now, students. So an essential phrase that I would argue is missing here relates to student learning. To me, students are at the heart of all innovations. For the past decade, Reinders and his huge team have been tracing innovations in ELT in Asian countries, in Thailand, China, Japan, and the Middle East, as you can see from the books here. But in their 2019 publication, this is how they described innovation. And here, I'd particularly like to place my emphasis on exactly what I am suggesting as being very important: better student learning and engagement. I was, in fact, at an international conference last week. It was a 3-day conference. And on the 3 days, many speakers were citing examples of technological tools like these as being helpful in promoting student engagement. Well, to me, no doubt, these tools encourage participation, but does participation necessarily mean engagement? I'm really not too sure if I would put an equal sign between the 2 words. When I think about language learning, or English language learning to be specific, isn't speaking and listening just as important as reading and writing? In other words, are we giving our students a complete voice through simply using these tools? From my own teaching experience, once the students are directed to a different online platform, once they leave the classroom space, so to speak, once they no longer have their eyes on you and on their classmates on the screen, to me, this isn't too different from having 30 black boxes. So yes, they are completing the tasks, and we may be happy to see words popping up on the screen on Padlet, for example. But where is the spontaneous interaction found in the physical classroom? Where is the eye-to-eye conversation? And as I go on, I'm actually going to play to you a clip. It's muted while I talk you through some of the key rationales behind some of the teaching decisions that I make in my own online classroom. So you'll see me in action online. So if I continue with my series of questions, where is the eye-to-eye conversation? Aren't we, to some extent, depriving our students of the chance to develop their communicative competence in areas such as fluency or pragmatic competence, or even to learn compensation strategies if they face difficulties expressing themselves in words, using eye contact, facial expressions, body language, for example? To me, having a voice first involves giving our students a social presence, or re-establishing their presence, to be exact, within the pandemic. reconnecting ourselves, helping us feel part of a class, a learning community, as our panelists have highlighted just now. To me, the togetherness on the screen is pivotal to success in online teaching, in engaging students. If we don't create opportunities for our students who are experiencing different forms of anxiety owing to the pandemic, who may have communication anxiety in a foreign or second language classroom, who may not be verbalizing their thoughts for linguistic, affective, social, and other reasons. And I thank Professor Wycombe for highlighting this affective notion. I can't agree more with this. To what extent are we maximizing the potentialities of the virtual English classroom? In our everyday English classroom, we are all aware that some students manifest themselves differently as kinesthetic or visual learners. And Professor Mattia just now was referring to Howard Gardner's model. And of course, there are other students who have different preferred learning styles. A question that I would often ask myself in the process of my inquiry over this 1+ year is, are we actually showing our students enough care, concern, sensitivity to their needs, especially with those with diverse learning needs and mixed abilities in an online environment? Could we convey to our students that we care about their smiles in addition to their performance, in addition to academic standing, their smiles, the affective side? And to what extent could we try to encourage them to go to the extent of creating an avatar of themselves, wanting to have their presence in the online classroom recorded to show their respect to their students? This is a student of mine who doesn't have a webcam, but he did this entirely on his own accord. It was a very thoughtful act, I would say, to have found an avatar of himself whose lips move and whose eyes blink when he speaks. So when we are asking ourselves sometimes, why aren't our students switching on their cameras? Why aren't they engaged in an online environment? Maybe we should be asking, are we fostering an atmosphere that promotes their willingness to communicate? What is imperative here for me is the how. What pedagogical strategies are we using to enable us to succeed in giving them this WTC online? As I would contend, it's not technology that does the job alone or on its own, but our awareness of, as teachers, of the affordances of technology, their functionalities, of the tools we select, and how we utilize these functionalities to achieve optimal pedagogic purposes. In an article that I've recently co-authored with my dear colleague, Professor Amy Choi at HKU, whom I'm sure many of you in the audience would know, we argue against the dichotomization of pedagogy and technology in the frequently cited dictum of the pedagogy horse before the technology cart. We ask, doesn't this oversimplify the dynamic relationship between the two? And apart from pedagogy and technology, how about the teacher, the students, the teaching content, the classroom dynamics, learning atmosphere, etc., and the interaction among these elements? In our paper, we cite examples from my own learning online teaching experiences, and you have seen some of them, to illustrate how what we call retool, how I retool e-learning platforms and technological tools to make sure that students' voices are heard, as you have seen, to maximize interactivity among them, to lessen their anxiety, communication anxiety, for example, and to give them the experience like how this student would describe it. If you're interested in more of these ideas, I'm more than happy to send you our paper. But just to highlight, I think my belief behind all that I have mentioned is with our mastery of the affordances of technology, if it is less advanced in our country, we can still think about which ones could we use. And my belief is if we're able to select the most appropriate tools, use them in a timely manner, retool them to suit the needs of our students, we could often surpass what we could achieve in a face-to-face teaching environment. So far, I seem to have focused largely on innovations on my part as an English language teacher educator. I'd like to spend the remaining part of my time discussing how this translates into English teaching and learning in primary and secondary school settings. And I see in the chat that some of you are particularly interested in this. So I hope what I'm going to share with you is going to be helpful. Innovative English teachers that I know are grasping every opportunity afforded by technology to make English learning meaningful and authentic. Starting from the very beginning by simply using e-learning platforms effectively by, for instance, inviting visitors from all walks of life around the world in different physical space and time zones, like us here today, into their classrooms. And this would otherwise not have been possible without technology. And here are 3 examples that I'd like to share with you. The first would be teacher Holly that you can see on the top of the screen. Holly invited me into her grade 11 class where each of the students came into the lesson with a little speech, sharing with us their personal feelings of being called Gen Zs, a very commonly used term these days, on the basis of which they invited us all, visitors and students alike, to be commenting on their ideas and to be dialoguing with them. After class, Holly, the teacher, invited us all to post our afterthoughts on Jamboard for further discussion there. To me, this was a truly inspirational, refreshing, and also very communicative experience. The second teacher that I'd like to share with you, Lawrence, had his students select YouTube clips that they enjoy watching, write their own script, and either record a voiceover narrating the scene or a conversation between the characters. Lawrence was actually happily telling me how many times he knew that his students were rehearsing their speech and redoing the recordings and were even wanting to do more. This is a scene, I think, according to him, that is rarely seen. For me, I was deeply fascinated by the accompanying music, animation, subtitles, and basically everything special that the students added to personalize their clips. This absolutely livened up the atmosphere amid the pandemic and made everyone's presence and voice much more strongly felt. The quality of the students' work was eventually so high, having given them the autonomy, that Lawrence decided to use Edpuzzle to embed questions into their videos to make their whole learning experience even more interactive. And at the same time, discussions were ongoing about their learning experiences and their joy of making the clips on the class Instagram. What is characteristic of teacher Lawrence's approach is his responsiveness to the needs of his students by selecting the most appropriate tools to use in a timely manner and for maximum language production, as well as to generate ownership on students' part. His teaching decisions, I would describe, are learner-centered, learner-directed, and learner-driven. In other words, learning or English learning became autonomous. And this takes me to my final example, the third teacher, teacher Jared, who gave his students the autonomy, the room, and the space to decide on the medium they would like to use to demonstrate their understanding of 10 newly learned words. Jared was actually flattered to have received 25 unique, absolutely unique masterpieces from them. And among them was a creatively written test by one student using quizzes for her classmates to practice their learned words. And another student who strang the words together into a coherent text and turned this into a Kahoot reading comprehension quiz for his peers. When I spoke to Jared, he actually jokingly said that sometimes, or he never really realized that his students write better tests and use technology more skillfully than he does. And when Jared was referring to a video put together by a student, a third student, using Flipgrid, who told a story about herself using the 10 selected words, he got a little emotional as he talked about this being the very first time this girl's voice was heard. In his view, this is a very shy and timid girl. And again, the affective side is just so important. But note, this mode of presentation was chosen by the student herself. The video was chosen by the student herself, not the teacher. So all this, I would say, is extremely revealing. And I hope the 3 examples that I shared with you just now are living examples to you of novel approaches of what is captured in the definition of effective ELT practices, but using the case of Hong Kong. What exactly is all this telling us? While we applaud some teachers, like the ones I mentioned, for their innovative design of lessons and tasks, to capitalize upon each individual's strengths and to give them a chance to excel, we could be asking ourselves, haven't some of these forms of technology been here for decades? And isn't giving our students the room to be creative and autonomous something that we could have integrated into our teaching even long before COVID? So these are indeed lots of missed opportunities that COVID got us to realize. Where exactly does this take us? If I wrap up with my acronym of Innovate, I think I'd like to encourage you all, based on the cases that I've shared with you, to continue our illuminating and empowering journey of inquiry, and in the process, to reimagine what our ideal post-pandemic classroom can look like, to keep our minds open to all possibilities around us, and never to say no to challenges. And it is really through overcoming these challenges that we will be further empowered to be more engaging teachers, as we now are. So I think I'll stop here. My time should be up, but I'm happy to take questions later on. Thank you very much.
Wow, that's a great presentation. Based on Nicole's own experience as a teacher educator and examples of 3 innovative English teachers in the light of some interpretations of innovation, Nicole nicely addressed how does innovation begin, where does it look like, and where does it take us. Thank you very much, Nicole, for sharing this with us. Ladies and gentlemen, we have finished with the first round of the talk. Now it's time for Q&A period. Our speakers will answer some questions that were sent to us during the presentation. And our MC, Xun Yu, will read your questions and we will direct them to the speakers. So Xun Yu, what's the first question?
All right. The first question is, what should we do with a large class of students whose ability is mixed? And I'll be interested to know how you implement group work, the experiential task 3As in an online context. That's the first question.
So it's on me, right? Thank you.
Yes.
For the lovely question. So the first part of the question is that how we use 3A in the large class. So here, as I mentioned in my presentation, that with the 3A, we can have group work, a group of 3, or we can have a group of 6 or 7 students. So if we have the large class, so we have the whole group. So instead of individual student asking questions, for the whole group, we have the group of asking questions, the group of analyzing questions, and the group of answering questions. We have bigger number of students. So in the group, they going together, make questions, right? And then in the analyzing group, they all together analyze the questions or analyze the answers as we mentioned before. And in the answering group, they take turn to answer the questions. So with the large class, I think that it worked perfectly in the class. And how about online? Yes, we experienced that So with the 3A models, with Zoom, it can work perfectly when the student, they are put in the group of 3 or in the group of 6 or in the group of 7, so they can work together in an online class, and they work. And later, they can use, if we don't have time for all the students to speak out at the same time, as I mentioned in my presentation, that we can have Padlet for the student. They put all things there, and then the student will be asked to ask questions related to the questions on Padlet. They will be asked to analyze the questions in the Padlet, and they will be asked to analyze the answer on Padlet at the same time. So they work, they take turn, but they can work online and offline. Thank you for the question. I don't know that was your question's answer.
Thank you very much. Okay. Next question, please, Xinyu.
Right. Okay, the next question is, I think the challenging part in innovative pedagogy is assessment. So please share how teachers are assessed to be certified and professional.
Okay, anyone of the panelists would like to answer this question? Maybe yeah, okay.
Oh, well, assessment, yes, very interesting. The teachers' competencies be assessed through, I think, performance, the real performance, I think. In my experience, when sometimes a teacher is well, versed in theories, but then it comes to the performance and still, still lacking. So combination of theory and practice, but the practice will have more. And that's my assessment through observation. Thank you.
Anyone would like to add? If
Well,
not, we move. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. I think in our institution, I'm very, very pleased to be working collaboratively with a number of colleagues in order to prepare our student teachers or teachers to make sure that they are qualified for full-time in-class teaching and also online teaching. We actually have, over the past year, we've organized quite a bit of micro-teaching activities for them, but micro-teaching activities where we bring in real students. And I think with technology now, with Zoom, with Google Meet, with Microsoft Teams, for example, it's a great opportunity, as I've shown you in Teacher Holly's case, to invite teachers as their mentors to come in, to give them feedback, to co-plan lessons with them, to bring in real students from their classes for their micro-teaching. And actually, after the sessions that we have tried organizing, these teachers would be working with our student teachers in small groups to guide them in their post-lesson reflections. And just now, Professor Yen was mentioning the importance of reflection. I can't agree more with you as well. So I think it's through this reflective bit that it's interesting that quite a number of our students, compared to previous years, despite it being in the pandemic, have actually talked about how much they feel they have grown pedagogically over just a one-year program, for example, by being prepared through coping with all the challenges and being supported by people from just so many walks of life, from different schools, with real students to give them the chance to develop and grow pedagogically.
Hi, Prof. Prakasit, are you in?
Where is he?
Right, no worries. I think it's because of technical issues. But we can proceed with the last question. And please bear in mind that because of time constraints, so we selected a few questions that are most frequently asked by the audience. And the last question is, what are the differences between hot, higher order thinking skills and creative critical skills?
Okay, I will answer that. Try to answer, in fact. Now, hot higher order thinking skills include critical thinking, okay? Critical thinking. When you are critical, you are searching for something, whether it's has a justice or consistency or equality, you know, then when in the text, for example. But it's not that, it's not only that, it's also include problem solving. So it's a problem is a gap between what you desire and the reality and how to solve the problem. And after that, decision making. So you have to decide. So in my course, you remember that one, they have to decide how to make the paper and how to revise, and this one is solving the problem, for example. But they have to be very critical because they have to review the literature. It's not just compiling, but it's a very hard part. Your students sometimes still low, you know, and then breaking up, it's a lot of work, a lot of that one here. So to develop higher order thinking needs effort from both teachers and the students. And it's incremental, to my observation, is incremental development. Sometimes flowing back and, you know, that one. And it's also influenced by culture. If, you know, it's sometimes students have some ideas in their mind, but withdraw from that one is not that spontaneous, it's reserved, you know, sometimes. So it's very hard to really encourage them to speak. Thank you.
Thank you.
I hope it's answered that. Oh, you're
sorry,
back.
I'm disconnected. Okay. I think because of time limitation, we have to stop the Q&A for now. Okay. Thank you very much for your question, and thank the speakers for answering those questions. Now is the second round for the speakers. For this round, I will ask each speaker to have their final words or whatever they would like to share with us. Okay. Probably in 1 minute, please. Okay. Who would like to start first? Maybe Professor Tu Hyun, would you like to?
Sure. Very quickly, at this pandemic, okay, during this time, I think it's more important for us to be more human. I always believe that the principle of becoming a teacher is to be a human first. From human, we move on to become a facilitator, and then mentor. It's the same thing when I look at innovations as well as in what you call whatever we do. I think context is very important because I normally work with teachers who are from very underprivileged area. So for them, if we talk about online teaching, is not going to work. So what we are trying to look at is we are looking at the ecology of support, not only for students, we also need to consider the teachers. So how do we make sure that it is sustainable, the encouragement, as well as the system that will make sure that they will stay in the system and the system will continue to thrive under their leadership. So that is about innovation, which we need support. We need bottom-up support from all of us. Let us be human first before we talk about anything else. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, maybe next, Professor Madhya, your final word, please.
Okay. Thank you very much. I agree with Kyung. Then, you know, we have to be human first, yes. Therefore, we have to respond to the student need, and, you know, and the context is very important. But one we shared is the connection. So problems of connection is everywhere. So I usually say, don't worry about that. We understand that, you know, so we have to be human. We have to understand the students' condition. Then by that, the students are grateful and, you know, finding out their motivation again. So smile and kind words in that particular situation, then connection is lost. Like just now you're lost, right? So, you're disconnected. So, you feel uneasy, right? So, but we are, that's okay. So I think I agree with you. Then the student needs should be taken into consideration, and we respond to that culturally. I think because the context, our culture is different. So we have to really understand the culture, how they feel, and, then we know that. By doing that, the new normal will be normal. I don't know. Thank you.
Thank you. And 1 minute for Professor Nguyen Thuy Nga, please, for your final words. Can you
yes.
unmute? Yeah,
thank you, Paraget. So I hope that I have more words in the next few other occasions, not only final words today, but in fact, we would like to share that I agree with the two presenters before that we are human and we're more human nowadays, and we need to respond to a student need. But in fact, I would like to add that we are human and we are teachers, and we are happy human and we are happy teachers. And then when we are happy and when we are healthy, when we work with our well-being, then we can bring positive things to our online and face-to-face classes. And I often ask the student whether they are happy, and some of them complain that we need to work with the online, and we don't want online courses. But in fact, that happened last year. But now the student feel that they need to work online, and why we do need to work online, and why we don't work online happily. So that I would like to bring my happiness and the student happiness to share with you today. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Nicole, your final conclusion, please. 1 minute. Thank you.
Thank you, all the presenters and the questions that we have in the chat. I am about to send.
Can you unmute? Nicole, your microphone.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I think I can't agree more with our three panelists who have just spoken. I think the pedagogy of care is just so important amid the pandemic. The article that I've just sent you is actually one written very recently, or recently published by two of my colleagues, Benjamin Morehouse and Mai Tiet, from our faculty, who have studied their own application of the pedagogy of care in a teacher education program in the context of English language education. And because of that, I've actually been doing a little bit of a search over the past week over how many teachers, how many researchers, how many publishers have actually included this in their consideration in planning, in teaching, in reflecting on the pandemic. And I've realized that there are actually, since COVID began, only 7 on the pedagogy of care or care-related topics. And among these 7, only 1 on English language education. And I think for English language education, as I've shared previously, is just so crucial because there are so many forms of anxiety, so many issues that we need to take into consideration in terms of individual differences and what the other panelists have also mentioned with regard to ways of engaging them. There could be lots happening outside that we need to support them in, and well-being, as is being discussed on the chat. So I think I would just encourage us all to remain as strong and courageous and brave as we can be in taking risks and work collaboratively, like in this wonderful network that we are having here, to strive towards supporting one another and doing our very best amid the pandemic, but also reflecting and being kind to ourselves at all times. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your final remark. On behalf of AsiaTEFL organization, I would like to extend my deepest appreciation to all the speakers for their time and for the great presentations. It was a pleasure to have you with us. I'm confident that the audience members certainly appreciate your wonderful talks. So this concludes the panel discussion. I'm sure we have learned and enjoyed this presentation, but don't go yet. we have not done it yet. I will give the floor to Shinyu.
Thank you, Dr. Prakasit. So I just would like to address two technical questions from the audience. So first, with regards to the recording of the webinar, the recording will be available on the AsiaTEFL Association Facebook after the session. So if you like to have access to the recording, please feel free to check for updates on Facebook. And the organizer won't be sharing with the audience our speakers' materials. However, you can approach the speakers to seek their permission to access their materials. Right. And secondly, we have also received some questions regarding certificates. So thank you very much for your inquiry. We are not issuing any certificates at the moment. However, we understand your situation and we assure you that we will look into this matter and we will make a decision on this. So thank you very much. And thank you so much for the very insightful session. And I think what we have learned from this session is that we can look at the new normal as an opportunity to move forward or to fast track our development in education. And this experience is a chance for us to be more adaptable, more humane, more resilient. And we are in the process learning new skills as well. And more importantly, we're not doing this all alone. We can learn this through building communities of practice that are sharing and helping each other to develop and grow. And that's why we are here every month, to engage with you and to provide you with a platform to connect with very humane people around the world. And we really hope that this would be the sources of inspiration for all ELT practitioners. So do join us monthly. So before we leave, let's have a look at the committee members who have been working very hard behind the scene to ensure that the webinar series is conducted successfully every month. So sit back and let's see who they are. So first we have Prof. Prakasit Sittikul. Next, it's me, Shinyu. Next, we have Dr. Savika Varaporn. And we have Fiona Sadagopan, Kittipat Chutichai Virat. We have Noor Hazrin Anwar, Kittichai Nilupol, Professor Hyekyong Lee, Dr. H.C. Aslam Khan, Tanbir Kaur Sekon, Dr. Zaira Abu Hassan Shari, Grace Chang Siu Ying, and we have Lukman Mayi from Thailand. We have Dr. Raja Maswin Aziz from Malaysia. We also have Dr. Ali Ahmad Saman from Malaysia. So these are the 15 committee members from Malaysia, from South Korea, and from Thailand who have been working very hard to make sure that this webinar series is up and running. So now we're not done yet. I'm sure you'll be wondering, what has been installed for the next webinar. So for the next webinar, our theme is up close and personal with award-winning teachers, transformation through passion and inspiration. From the title itself, we know that there will be award-winning teachers from different countries with us at the webinar. And these teachers include the finalist of the Global Teacher Prize from Malaysia, the winner of Innovation International Award from Russia, the winner of the Scholarship Awards from Cambodia, and a visually impaired teacher who received royal recognition from Thailand. So who they are. So save your date and join us on the 21st August 2021. So we have come to an end of the second webinar. It's a great pleasure to have all of you joining us today from many parts of the world. And a big thank you to our moderator and our 4 very inspiring panelists. Thank you and see you next month. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Hi everyone. Bye everyone. See you next time.
See you. Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining in. Thank you very much.